This is AP Environmental Science, Chapter 1, Environmental Problems, Their Causes, and Sustainability. This lecture will cover Section 1, What are some principles of sustainability? First of all, what is sustainability? Sustainability is the capacity of the Earth's natural systems and human cultural systems to survive, flourish, and adapt to changing environmental conditions into the very long-term future. It is the overall theme of environmental science, as well as a focal point for understanding the environmental problems we face and for exploring possible solutions. My goal is to present to you a realistic and hopeful vision of what could be. Moving on to this section, what are some principles of sustainability? There are three key concepts for this section. 1. Nature has been sustained for billions of years by relying on solar energy, biodiversity, and chemical cycling. 2. Our lives and economies depend on energy from the sun and on natural resources and ecosystem services, natural capital, to provide and be provided by the earth. And number 3. We could shift toward living more sustainably by applying full cost pricing, searching for win-win solutions, and committing to preserving the Earth's life support system for future generations. Environmental science is a study of connections in nature. The environment is everything around us. It includes the living and the non-living things, like air, water, and energy, with which we interact in a complex web of relationships that connect us to one another and to the world we live in. Despite our many scientific and technological advances, we are utterly dependent on the earth for clean air and water, food, shelter, energy, fertile soil, and everything else that the planet's life support system provides us. Environmental science is an interdisciplinary study of how humans interact with the living and non-living parts of their environment. It integrates information and ideas from the natural sciences, such as biology, chemistry, and geology, the social sciences, such as geography, economics, and political science, and the humanities, such as ethics. There are three goals of environmental science. 1. To learn how life on Earth has survived and thrived. 2. To understand how we interact with the environment. And 3. To find ways to deal with environmental problems and live more sustainably. A key component of environmental science is ecology. Ecology is the biological science that studies how living things interact with one another and with their environment. These living things are called organisms. Each organism belongs to a species, which is a group of organisms that has a unique set of characteristics that distinguish it from other groups of organisms. A major focus of ecology is the study of ecosystems. An ecosystem is a set of organisms within a defined area or volume that interact with one another and with their environment of non-living matter and energy. For example, a forest ecosystem consists of plants, especially trees, animals, and various other organisms that decompose organic materials, all interacting with one another, with solar energy, and with the chemicals in the forest air, water, and soil. We shouldn't confuse environmental science and ecology with environmentalism. Environmentalism is a social movement dedicated to trying to protect the Earth's life support systems from all forms of life. Environmentalism is practiced more in the political and ethical areas rather than the realm of science. Three scientific principles of sustainability. How has an incredible variety of life on Earth been sustained for at least 3.5 billion years in the face of catastrophic changes in environmental conditions? Such changes included gigantic meteorites impacting the Earth, ice ages that lasted for hundreds of millions of years, and even those long warming periods where the ice melted and raised the sea levels by hundreds of feet. The latest version of our species has been around for only about 200,000 years, which is less than a blink of an eye compared to the 3.5 billion years that life has existed on the Earth. Yet, there is mounting scientific evidence that as we've expanded into and dominated almost all of Earth's ecosystems during that short time, we've seriously degraded these natural systems that support our species and all other life forms, as well as our economies. Thus, the newest challenge for the human species is to learn how to live more sustainably, and some scientists argue that we have no time to waste in doing it. Many scientists contend that the Earth is the only real example of a sustainable system. Our science-based research leads us to believe that there's three major natural factors that have played key roles in the long-term sustainability of life on this planet. We use these three scientific principles of sustainability, or lessons from nature, throughout AP Environmental to suggest how we might move forward and try to move toward a more sustainable future. Those three things are dependence on solar energy, biodiversity, and chemical cycling. Dependence on solar energy. The sun warms the planet and provides energy that plants use to produce nutrients, or the chemicals necessary for their own life processes, along with those of most other animals, including humans. The sun also powers indirect forms of solar energy, such as wind and flowing water, which we use to produce electricity. Biodiversity. Biodiversity is short for biological diversity. Biodiversity is the variety of genes, organisms, species, and ecosystems in which organisms exist and interact. The interactions among species, especially the feeding relationships, provide vital ecosystem services and keep any population from growing too large. Biodiversity also provides countless ways for life to adapt to changing environmental conditions, even catastrophic changes that wipe out large numbers of species. Chemical cycling. Chemical cycling, or nutrient cycling, is the circulation of most chemicals necessary for life from the environment, mostly from soil and water, through organisms and back to the environment. Because the Earth receives no new supply of those chemicals, organisms must recycle them continuously in order to survive. This means that there is very little waste in nature, other than that of the human world, because the waste of any organism becomes nutrients or raw materials for other organisms. So these are the three scientific principles of sustainability: solar energy, biodiversity, and chemical cycling. Sustainability has certain key components. Sustainability, which is the central integrating theme of environmental science, has several critical components that we use as sub-themes. One such component would be natural capital, the natural resources and natural services They keep us and other species alive and support human economies. Natural resources are materials and energy in nature that are essential or useful to humans. They're often classified as inexhaustible resources, such as energy from the sun and wind, renewable resources, such as air, water, topsoil, plants, and animals, or non-renewable or depletable resources, like copper, oil, and coal. Natural services or ecosystem services are processes provided by healthy ecosystems. Examples include purification of air and water, renewal of topsoil, and pollination, which support life and human economies at no monetary cost to us. For example, forests help us to purify air and water, regulate the climate, reduce soil erosion, and provide countless species with a place to live. One vital natural service is chemical or nutrient cycling, which is one of the 3 scientific principles of sustainability. An important component of nutrient cycling is topsoil, a vital natural resource that provides us and most other land-dwelling species with food. Without nutrient cycling in topsoil, life as we know it would probably not exist on Earth's land. Natural capital is also supported by energy from the sun, another of the scientific principles of sustainability. Thus, our lives and economies depend on energy from the sun and on natural resources and natural services provided by the earth. A second component of sustainability, and another sub-theme, is to recognize that many human activities can degrade natural capital by using normally renewable resources such as trees and topsoil faster than nature can restore them, and by overloading the Earth's normally renewable air and water systems with pollution and waste. For example, in some parts of the world, we're replacing diverse and naturally sustainable forests with crop plantations that can be sustained only with large inputs of water, fertilizer, and pesticides. We're also adding harmful chemicals and waste to some rivers, lakes, and oceans faster than these bodies of water can cleanse themselves through natural processes. And this leads us to our third component of sustainability: solutions. While environmental scientists search for scientific solutions to problems such as the unsustainable degradation of forests and other forms of natural capital, social scientists are also looking for economic and political solutions. For example, a scientific solution to the problems of depletion of forests is to stop burning or cutting down biologically diverse, mature forests. A scientific solution to the problem of pollution, for example, a specific pollution would be to the rivers, would be to prevent excessive dumping of harmful chemicals and waste into streams and to allow them to recover naturally. However, to implement such solutions, governments might have to enact and enforce environmental laws and regulations. The search for solutions often involves conflicts. For example, when a scientist argues for protecting a natural forest on a government-owned land to help preserve its important diversity of plants and animals, the timber company that had planned to harvest the trees in the forest might protest. Dealing with such conflicts often involves making trade-offs or compromises, another component of sustainability. For example, the timber company might be persuaded to plant and harvest trees in an area that had already cleared or degraded, instead of clearing the trees in an undisturbed diverse natural reforest. But in return, the government might even give them a subsidy or financial support to meet some of those costs for planting the trees. In making a shift towards sustainability, the daily actions of each and every individual are important. In other words, individuals matter, another sub-theme. History shows that almost all of the significant changes in the human systems have come from the bottom up through the collective actions of individuals and from individuals inventing more sustainable ways of doing things. Thus, sustainability begins with actions at personal and local levels. Other principles of sustainability come from the social sciences. Our search for solutions and trade-offs to environmental problems has led us to propose 3 social science principles of sustainability derived from studies of political science, and ethics. We believe that these, along with our 3 scientific principles of sustainability, can serve as general guidelines for living more sustainably. The social science principles of sustainability are full cost pricing from economics, win-win solutions from political science, and a responsibility to future generations from ethics. Full cost pricing. Many economists urge us to find ways to include the harmful environmental and health costs of producing and using goods and services in their market prices, a practice called full cost pricing. This would give consumers better information about the environmental impacts of their lifestyles, but it would also allow them to make more informed choices about the goods and services they use. Win-win solutions. We can learn to work together in dealing with environmental problems by focusing on solutions that will benefit the largest possible number of people, as well as the environment. This means shifting from the I win, you lose approach to a we both win approach, win-win solutions, and even an I win, you win, the earth wins approach, which would technically be a win-win-win solution. A responsibility to future generations. We should just go ahead and accept our responsibility to leave the planet's life support systems in at least as good a shape as what we now enjoy for future generations. It's just the responsible thing to do. And there you have it, the 3 social science principles of sustainability. Full cost pricing, win-win results, and responsibility to future generations. Some resources are renewable and some are not. From a human standpoint, a resource is anything that can obtain from the environment to meet our needs and our wants. Some resources such as solar energy, wind, surface water, and edible wild plants are directly available for us to use. Other resources such as petroleum, minerals, underground water, and cultivated plants become useful to us only with some effort and technological ingenuity. For example, petroleum. It was merely a mysterious oily fluid until we learned how to convert it into gasoline, heating oil, and other products. Solar energy is called an inexhaustible resource because its continuous supply is expected to last for at least 6 billion years or until the sun dies. A renewable resource is one that can be replenished by natural processes within hours to centuries as long as we don't use it up faster than natural processes can renew it. Examples could include forests, grasslands, fisheries, fertile topsoil, clean air, and fresh water. The highest rate at which we can use a renewable resource indefinitely without reducing its available supply is called its sustainable yield. During most of the 10,000 years we spent inventing agriculture, civilization has lived on the sustainable yield of the Earth's natural systems. But in recent decades, we've been living unsustainably by degrading and depleting the Earth's natural capital in an accelerating rate to fuel a growing population and an ever-increasing resource consumption. As a result, In parts of the world, we're over-harvesting forests, overgrazing grasslands, overfishing oceans, overdrawing underground water deposits, and overloading the air and water with harmful wastes and pollutants. Non-renewable or exhaustible resources exist in a fixed quantity or stock in the Earth's crust. On a timescale of millions to billions of years, geologic processes can renew such resources. However, on a much shorter human timescale of hundreds to thousands of years, we can deplete these resources much faster than nature can form them. Such exhaustible stocks include energy sources such as oil and coal, metallic mineral resources such as copper and aluminum, and non-metallic mineral resources such as salt and sand. As we deplete such resources, human ingenuity can often find substitutes. However, sometimes there's no acceptable or affordable substitute for a resource. From an environmental and sustainability viewpoint, the priorities for more sustainable use of non-renewable resources should be in order: refuse, reduce, reuse, and recycle. Each of these steps helps to extend supplies and to reduce the environmental impacts of using these resources. According to a number of environmental scientists, we already know how to reuse or recycle at least 80% of the metal, glass, and other non-renewable resources that we use. However, we cannot recycle or reuse non-renewable energy resources such as oil, natural gas, and coal. Once burned, the concentrated energy that they contain is just dispersed as heat into the environment, and it's no longer available to us. Countries differ in their resource use and environmental impact. The United Nations classifies the world's countries as economically more developed or less developed, based primarily on their average income per person. In using these classifications, we do not mean to imply that either type of country is superior to the other. We are simply distinguishing between the countries in terms of their economic activity, because this measure is highly useful for studying the resource use and environmental impacts of nations and regions. More developed countries are industrialized nations with higher average income. This is about 17% of the world's population, and it includes the United States, Canada, Japan, Australia, and most of the European countries. All other nations, which if you subtract from 100 is about 83% of the world's people, are classified as less developed countries, and most of them are in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Some are middle-income, moderately developed countries, and this would include China, India, Brazil, Thailand, and Mexico. Others are low-income, less developed countries, and this would include Congo, Haiti, and Nigeria. This concludes this section of Chapter 1 for APES. Feel free to review or repeat this lecture or any other APES lectures through the provided platform.